Welcome along to the TFA podcast. If you're looking for, really deep analysis and football tactics, you are definitely in the right place.
Absolutely. And you can always find our latest work over on the website, totalfootballanalysis.com.
That's right. And hey, we've got a special offer running for our listeners. You can grab 30% off your TFA subscription. Just use the code TFAPOD at checkout. That's TFAPOD.
Good deal. So what are we diving into today? Something pretty big, I hear.
Yeah, huge. We're looking at Liverpool's 2024-2025 season. Specifically, how on earth Arne Slot came in and won the Premier League title in his very first season.
Wow. Straight off the bat. That's remarkable.
It really is. Our analysis is based on, everything we've covered here at TFA throughout the season, and we've put together a detailed tactical report looking specifically at Slot's Liverpool.
So the big question is, how? How did he do it? Especially coming in after a figure like Jurgen Klopp with his own, distinct style.
Exactly. Let's get into that. It's a really interesting story.
Well, first off, the Premier League itself, it has this unique advantage, doesn't it, with English being so widely spoken globally.
Yeah, it makes hiring top international managers maybe a bit easier than in some other leagues.
Definitely. We've seen loads of success stories. Pep Guardiola, Mikel Arteta, and of course the man Slot replaced, Jurgen Klopp. He built something incredible at Anfield.
He really did. And replacing him, that was always going to be a massive task. So in comes Arne Slot. Successful in the Netherlands, sure, with Izzy Alkmaar and Feyenoord.
Yeah, very successful there. But crucially, he'd never coached outside the Netherlands before, and certainly not at a club with the sheer scale and pressure of Liverpool.
Not at all. And yet, boom, Premier League title. First season.
It puts him in seriously rare company. Very few managers have done that. You're talking Conte at Chelsea, Pellegrini at City, Ancelotti, Mourinho's first time at Chelsea.
An exclusive club, for sure. So thinking about Klopp's legacy, that really intense counter-pressing identity, how did Slot manage the tactical side? Because his reputation was maybe more about possession.
Yeah, that's the fascinating part. Klopp's Liverpool, you instantly think gegenpressing, work rate off the ball, transitions, that Dortmund DNA.
Right. Whereas Slot, you think controlled football, clear patterns with the ball, dominating that way. They sound almost opposite.
Well, yes and no. What really stood out from our analysis at TFA was how intelligently Slot handled it. He didn't just come in and say, right, forget everything you knew. That would have been madness.
A huge risk, yeah.
He recognized the strength of that defensive foundation Klopp had built. The players understood pressing.
Yeah.
They had the work ethic. So he sort of built on top of it.
Okay, so he layered his possession ideas onto the existing pressing structure.
Kind of, yeah. He respected what was already working. He implemented his own principles, definitely, pushing towards more control. But he used that defensive solidity as a platform for immediate results. You can't just overhaul a title-contending team overnight in this league.
Makes sense. So practically, how did that look on the pitch? Formation, defensive shape?
Well, we saw him tinker a bit early on, remember? There was that brief look at a 4-2-4 formation.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Didn't last long, though.
No, he pretty quickly settled into a more, let's say, traditional 4-2-3-1 for most of the season. Defensively, the big thing was keeping things really tight centrally when the opposition had the ball deep.
Right, deny that space between the lines, protect the middle. We saw that against Newcastle, for example, didn't we?
Exactly. We break that down.
Yeah.
They were focused on closing off those central passing lanes during the build-up phase.
And the press. Still aggressive. What triggered it?
The trigger often seemed to be that pass out to the opposition fullback, which interestingly was a classic Klopp trigger too.
There's some continuity there.
Definitely. But the reaction behind it was key. We saw examples maybe Diaz was a fraction late on the press sometimes.
Potentially leaving a gap.
For a moment, yeah. But then you'd see the reaction. If the ball did go down the line, a central midfielder, maybe McAllister or Zorobozlai, would immediately shift across, covering the nearby opponent, while the Liverpool fullback, say Robertson, would fly out to press the winger.
So a coordinated shift, covering each other.
Spot on. And behind them, you had Van Dijk and Konate sweeping up, covering that space in behind. That partnership was immense again.
You need that security if you're pressing high.
Absolutely. And overall, that combination, the compact shape, the specific trigger, the work rate to cover it, was really effective at winning the ball back. You could see a clear plan, and the players were buying into it. Attitude was spot on.
Okay, so the basic press was effective. What about those famous Klopp pressing traps? Did Slot keep those in the locker?
He did, yeah. They were still part of the toolkit, although maybe perhaps used a touch less frequently. It felt like it anyway.
Why do you think that was? Just the overall shift towards more possession, maybe?
Possibly. Or maybe just integrated differently. With the default setup being so focused on that central compactness, setting specific traps might have been slightly less of a primary go-to compared to Klopp's most intense phases, but they were definitely there.
How did they look under Slot when they did use them?
Often it involved making it look like a central pass was on. So maybe a central midfielder drifts slightly wide, or a winger like Diaz takes up a position that seems to invite the opponent to play inside him into the half space.
Like baiting the hook.
Exactly. You dangle the carrot of a line-breaking pass into what looks like space.
But it's not really space.
Not for long. As soon as that pass is played, bang. The trap springs. The nearest fullback, like Robertson, that West Ham example we looked at, jumps the receiver instantly. Other players swarm around closing options ready for the second ball.
And then capitalize quickly.
That was the key. They were lethal once they won it back like that. The opposition is suddenly disorganized, players out of position. Liverpool would progress the ball so quickly and precisely into that chaos.
Direct attack.
Often, yeah. But there's also this interesting little principle Slot seemed to emphasize. Sometimes, the very first pass after winning the ball back would be a simple, safe one. Just to secure possession, regain composure for a split second.
Okay. So not always immediately forwards like Klopp sometimes demanded. More calculated.
Maybe slightly. Secure it, then exploit the space. We saw McAllister make these great horizontal runs into space after a turnover, receiving that slightly safer pass and then threading a killer ball forward. It allowed them to hit dangerous areas just in front of the box really effectively.
Makes them unpredictable. Hard to play against if the defense can turn into attack that quickly.
Totally. You press them, they play through it. You sit off, they control possession. You try a risky pass, they trap you and score. It's tough.
And those fast attacks, even when not from a pressing trap, were a huge weapon, weren't they? Liverpool were just electric in transition.
Oh, absolutely. Top tier in Europe in that phase. Their positional play was good, very good, but the speed and coordination of their fast breaks, that was often where they really dominated teams.
What made them so effective there? Just individual quality. Salah having another world-class season helps, obviously.
That helps massively. But it was also the structure, the principles of movement. Lots of movement in the final third, getting bodies into the box, isolating those brilliant wingers like Salah in 1v1s. And interestingly, even on fast breaks, the first look was often to try and get the ball back into the central areas if possible.
Right, not just bombing down the wings necessarily. How did they create that central space on the break?
Through really clever, coordinated runs, the key idea seemed to be this alternating movement. Players running from central areas out wide, and players from wide areas running inside, like a zigzag.
Pulling defenders around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So imagine the ball's carried wide, maybe by Trent Alexander-Arnold cutting in from right back.
Yeah.
He runs inside. At the same time, Salah, who might have started centrally, drifts out to the touchline.
Taking the defender with them.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah.
Or at least confusing the defenders. That creates a pocket of space centrally. Then maybe Szoboszlai makes a driving run from midfield towards the back line into that space, receives a pass.
Drawing a center back out.
Precisely. And as the center back steps out, another runner, maybe the striker or another midfielder, makes a diagonal dart into the space the center back just vacated. Quick through ball, finish.
Wow. Sounds complex but fluid when it works. Requires real understanding between the players.
It really does. And they executed those patterns consistently well. Szoboszlai in particular seemed to thrive, making those late runs into space created by others.
Okay, so fast transitions, clever movement. But what about breaking down teams that just sat deep? The Premier League demands efficiency there too, right? You can't rely on transition goals all the time.
Absolutely essential. You face so many teams, especially away from home, who will just set up a low block. We saw that against Ipswich Town, for instance. Liverpool needed efficient ways to unlock those defenses without running themselves into the ground.
And they evolved their build-up for that, didn't they? You mentioned that asymmetrical backline.
Yeah, that became quite a feature. Robertson, for example, would often tuck inside, almost creating a back three in possession.
While Trent pushed really high on the other side.
Exactly. Trent playing almost like a winger at times.
Yeah.
This asymmetry helped create different passing angles, stretch the opposition's shape, and try to disrupt that solid block.
And that Ipswich goal we analyzed was a perfect example of that efficiency.
It really was. It started with Robertson under a bit of pressure, playing it back safely to Van Dijk, simple pass. Van Dijk then shifts it across to Konate.
Who had space because of that back three shape.
Right. And Konate drives forward into that space. This immediately forces Ipswich to react. to shift across. As he drives, you see Diaz and Salah making runs in behind, pinning the center backs deep.
Creating space between the lines.
Bingo. And who pops up in that space? Szoboszlai. Konate plays this brilliant pass, sharp against the grain of the defense's movement, right into Szoboszlai's feet on the edge of the box.
And he finished it.
Bang! Goal. And look how efficient it was. Robertson carries two simple square passes across the back. Konate drives and makes one decisive forward pass. Goal. That's how you break down a low block without endless, tiring circulation.
It feels like maybe tactical theory sometimes gets overplayed. At the end of the day, it's about getting your best players in the right positions to do damage.
I think there's a lot of truth in that. Slot's Liverpool seemed less about some incredibly complex esoteric system and more about consistently executing a set of core principles really, really well, maximizing the huge talent they have.
It clearly worked for the league campaign. Obviously, as you mentioned, it wasn't perfect. The Champions League exit to PSG, losing the EFL Cup final to Newcastle, those were disappointments.
They were. No season is perfect. And those results show areas where they perhaps fell short or where opponents found ways to nullify them on the day.
But for the fans, after the chain, winning the Premier League in Slot's first go, that's the main thing, surely.
Absolutely. That's the bottom line. He delivered the biggest prize straight away. He's joined that elite group of managers we talked about. He's already made his mark on Premier League and Liverpool history.
And based on what we saw tactically, the way the team adapted and performed, you'd have to be optimistic about the future under him.
You would, yeah. The foundation looks incredibly strong. So yeah, massive congratulations to Liverpool. A well-deserved 2024-2025 Premier League title.
So wrapping up our deep dive then, it seems Slot's success came from this clever blend, didn't it? Taking Klopp's foundations, the press, the work rate, and adding his own layers, particularly in possession and those structured attacking patterns.
Yeah, blending the old and the new effectively. Building on strengths while implementing his own vision. Mastering the press, the transition, and finding ways to be efficient in attack.
And hopefully for you listening, this gives you a good handle on how they did it, a concise look at the tactical recipe behind their title win.
Definitely. And it leaves you thinking, doesn't it?
Yeah.
With the system now in place and having maybe learned from those cup defeats, what comes next? How will Slot evolve this team further next season?
Ooh, good question. And how will other teams try and stop them now they've seen this approach work so well? Lots to look forward to.
For sure.
Okay, that's us for this deep dive on the TFA podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember to check out totalfootballanalysis.com for loads more analysis.
And don't forget that discount code TFAPOD for 30% off a subscription.
Catch you next time.